Amber on the wrist. You can hear a lie, but it smells better. Most people think scent is frivolous, bottled romance and clever glass. They don't know it's the oldest language in a crowded room. Skin says yes or no long before mouths remember their lines. That's how I make a living. I listen with my nose. I'm Callum. I build perfumes in a studio above a neon noodle shop, where steam climbs the stairwell and installs itself in my sweaters. My tools are brown apothecary bottles and droppers that tick like patient metronomes. I write in formulas and in ghosts. One drop of orris butter can turn bravado into prayer. A shred of labdanum warms a promise until it melts. Civet is the memory of misbehavior, cleaned up for company. When I calibrate a blend, I set strips on a metal tray and wait for the dry down to tell me the truth. It always does. Myra calls me a translator. She's an art director with pitched decks like ballet, muscle disguised as grace. We met at a launch party where the hors d'oeuvres looked engineered and the DJ played nostalgia with a new haircut. Our first kiss tasted of Hava and gin. When she moved into my apartment, I made a scent just for her. Cedar and black tea, a lick of pear for the way her mouth went soft when she laughed, and a molecular musk that was clean without being polite. She wore it like a secret handshake. The trouble announced itself as a foreign sweetness on our sheets. Not candy, something riper, a syruped fig with benzoin's lacquer over it. It didn't belong to us. I stood with my palms on the mattress the way a man might try to talk a river into flowing back uphill. Myra came from the bathroom wrapped in a towel, and that new smell drifted from the damp of her hair. She saw me smelling the air and her mouth pressed into a practiced shape. "Don't," she said. "I'm not." I was. She sat on the edge of the bed and held my wrist. Her fingers were warm, the towel's fringe made a soft noise against her thigh. "We work late," she said, an opening line with a soft pedal. "Life is porous. I don't want to lie for sport. I don't want us to police our hearts like a boarder. I want to tell you when wanting happens." "I'd prefer it didn't," I said, then surprised the adult in both of us by not preaching. "What are you asking?" She exhaled. "That we're honest before, not brave after. That we don't invite disaster into our bed. That humiliation isn't a spice. And that we protect the thing that is actually us. Can we try that and see if we still recognize ourselves in a month?" Desire, like resin, hardens at room temperature. We warmed it. We wrote rules on the back of a ramen receipt and tucked them in a cookbook. I made coffee brutal enough to forgive. She kissed the corner of my mouth like a promise she intended to keep. Work saved me from thinking too much. The Cobalt Room, a private club that believes velvet solves everything, hired me to invent their signature scent. The brief said, "Addicted without shame." I said yes because my rent likes concrete verbs and because I have a weakness for ambitious rooms. The club's creative director met me in a hallway where the wallpaper thought highly of itself. She reached out her hand as if we were about to dance. "Lydia," she said. The name matched the movement. Her perfume was wrong for her suit, smoky lapsing in a glass office. She smelled like a fireplace that had learned manners. "The air already belongs to you," I said. "That's the problem," she said and smiled. "We need it to belong to us." She walked me through velvet and shadow, under a chandelier that hung like a moon pretending not to be rich. The lounge gave up its leather and its lies a little at a time. I took notes while my brain staged a coup. Lydia had surprised ease, the kind that hasn't had to audition for charm lately. She talked with her hands, palms open, wrists bare. There's a point on the inner wrist. Anatomists call it whatever Latin makes them happy, where scent settles like a decision. Lydia's were clean and waiting. We built the scent together over 3 afternoons that bled into evenings because the Cobalt Room kidnapped time. I set out accords like dueling pianos, a vaporous violet to soften the corners, a buckskin suede note to roughen them again, pink pepper for flirtation without apology. I painted a sketch on a muillet and she brought her skin to it. She didn't hesitate. She turned her hand so I could paint her pulse. Here, I asked, though I knew. It was a formality or a foreplay. Here, she said, voice low and lifted her eyes. Whatever you've heard about eye contact is true when the right people are holding it. My thumb steadied the paper against her. Her wrist was warm, the tiny flutter of blood under my nail the exact tempo of bad ideas earned slowly. I breathed in and the violet uncurled and the suede got lazy and the pepper smiled. Lydia smiled too. Tasting is an intimacy the mouth never gets credit for. We did not kiss. We hovered in that stanza. Some songs are better before the chorus. She stepped back and broke the spell and called a server for champagne that had opinions. We drank what rich people drink when they're pretending to be friends with risk. Does your wife know you live in other rooms as long as they smell expensive? Lydia asked, teasing under polite. My girlfriend knows I live in my nose, I said. Then I said, because that had stopped being the whole truth, she also knows I can be taught. And you, she asked, are you teachable? Depends on the teacher, I said. We became precise. We wrote rules with the delicacy of a perfumer counting drops. No appearances, no photographs, no stories that needed more characters than we could carry. Before, not after. Never in the club's rooms, work was sanctified. We agreed the body hates ultimatums. We agreed to leave nothing that a cleaner would find. I told Myra that night. We sat at our kitchen counter with my forearms lacquered in cardamom and lemon oil like stained glass. She listened with her chin on her fist and her ankles hooked around the stool like a girl plotting. Thank you for the before, she said. Keep doing that. Do you want me to stop? I asked, like a man trying on virtue the way you try a coat in a shop, expensively in front of someone else. I want you not to pretend your want is a defect you're heroically surviving, she said, and reached, and tapped my mouth with her index finger. And I want you not to bring her here the way you bring work home on your cuffs. Make me feel chosen where I'm supposed to. I took her to bed and kissed her until we both believed the future could behave. Between us, the city threw light against our curtains and pretended to be innocent. The Cobalt Room unveiled its scent to donors who wished they could be a mood board. It lived in diffusers disguised as sculptures, and on silk squares that made grown men dab their throats like courtesans in training. The thing we'd made moved through the lounge like an apology nobody had to say out loud. Lydia wore a tailored suit and a ring I'd noticed before but hadn't studied as fiercely. I met her husband at the gala, a financier with a smile you could lease and a watch so quiet it screamed. Roman thanked me for domesticating the air. He shook my hand like we were both buying each other. It should have felt like triumph. It felt like choreography waiting to trip. Roman introduced me to a woman in a red dress whose perfume had that Figan benzoin signature I had smelled on my sheets. She held out her hand and I shook it and pretended my bones didn't know the joke. You two would get along, Roman said. You both sell intimacy. Yours is more scalable, I said, and his laugh thought we were friends. After midnight, when the club had exhausted itself to a handsome glow, Lydia and I went upstairs to the office where we'd done the work. The room smelled of paper and our earlier days, lacquered with the new fragrance in a way that felt slightly indecent, like leaving the door ajar. She stood by the window, and her reflection hung in the glass like a second chance. I feel visible in a way I didn't budget for, she said. I should ration empathy, I said lightly, then failed at levity. I am also visible in places I didn't intend to be. She turned. Do you regret it? Regret requires an exit sign, I said. I'm still in the room. She came to me slowly, not coy, deliberate. She reached up and smoothed the collar of my shirt like she was testing whether the fabric would remember her. When she kissed me, it was a decision executed with care. The combined scent of her skin and the thing we'd made together went up through my nose into the part of me that writes bad poetry in cases like this. Her mouth was soft and intent. My hands learned the shape of her back under the jacket, the slope of her shoulder, the way she rose onto her toes when desire pressed its case. We stopped because the carpet didn't deserve us, and because I wasn't built for detonations in rooms with security cameras. Later, she said, thumb brushing my lower lip. Somewhere ordinary. I want to remember that we are not the club. In the days after, I learned what happens when you install a scent in someone's life. Your ghost shakes hands with their mornings. I walked home through the city that had started to smell like us and found the fig and benzoin on my pillow again. Myra was at her desk, hair up, the towel of concentration around her shoulders. She looked at me and I waited for the punchline. It didn't come. She closed her laptop like a gentle goodbye to a tedious friend. I went to the cobalt room with a photographer, she said. We drank the air. I know, I said too quick. I smelled you smelling me. I wondered if you would, she said. It was an experiment. He didn't pass the parts that matter. What parts are those? The ones where I feel more than flattered, she said. The parts where the room costs less than the man. She walked to me and slid her arms around my waist and pressed her face into my chest, and I breathed her in, my cedar and tea, and something else that I could name and didn't want to. Are we still us? She asked. We are until we say we aren't, I said, trying to be a good man inside a true one. I saw Lydia in a cheap diner near the river because it had bad lighting, and a good pie and nobody who'd recognize us, unless they happened to be hungry for the same slice at the same hour. Her hair was down. She wore a sweater that wouldn't survive the club, and the wrist I had painted with violet was bare and indisputable. The waitress poured coffee without interrupting our conspiracy. We can have this, Lydia said quietly, but not if it makes me live in lies I didn't choose. Roman collects grace like a hobby. He thinks modernity means never asking who you are when you're alone. He'd call us advanced for wanting what we want and then calculate the social ROI while I looked out the window. Does he know his wife smells like a decision she made without asking his permission? I asked. You tell me, she said. You're the translator. I wanted to take her hand. I didn't. I wanted to take her somewhere with a bed that belonged to nobody and sheets that smelled like detergent and wet hair. I did that. Adult is not a synonym for joyless. We didn't rush. We undressed as if our clothes had earned respect. Her body begged for no speech. When my mouth found the warm hollow of her shoulder, her breath left her like a secret in relief. I won't describe what furniture we used, which sounds we made, beyond saying we were tender where we'd been fierce and fierce where tenderness would have been another ruse. We let our hands learn their characters without improvising a scene we couldn't sustain. After, her cheek stayed against my chest while the radiator clanked an old song, and I smelled the humility of laundry and heat and us. We could have gone on. Many do. We didn't. The end arrived with no insult, only a realization that thrilled and wounded me. I wasn't a room Lydia could live in without redecorating herself into a stranger. She wanted a life where nobody proposed terms in a hallway. She wanted the chandelier to be something you turned off with a switch, not a thesis. We kissed goodbye like people who were grateful for the version of themselves they had met in a stranger's mouth. At home, I told Myra that I was out of appetite for treaties. She listened and took the ramen receipt from the book and smoothed it as if the creases were a bruise she could heal. We tried to write rules over instinct, she said. Instinct brought a pen. She put the paper under the magnet on the fridge, this time as a relic rather than an instruction. We slept with our legs tangled in the way that feels like right-sized bravery. In the morning, she wore my cedar again. That's how I knew the world hadn't ended, just changed its sillage. The cobalt room kept my scent. People inhaled and thought themselves more interesting. Roman sent an email with the word evergreen in it and a number that made my accountant blush. Lydia mailed me a small velvet box with a note, for the air between decisions. Inside was a silver travel atomizer engraved with a single word, us. I filled it not with the club fragrance, but with something I made in an unguarded hour. Bergamot and tea from the day we met, violet paired to a whisper, swayed only at the very end, and a quiet amber that shows up late and stays, the way certain truths do. I named it simply, Amber on the Wrist. Sometimes, walking past the club on a rainy night, I catch a ribbon of the thing we built curling out under the door like a rumor that refuses to stay put. I feel proud and sad and relieved in a braid. If I stop in the alley to breathe, I can still find the other note. My own, the little bottle in my pocket, shy but sure. I've learned what scent always knew. Everything fades, but the right things leave a warmth behind. You can follow it home if you don't hurry. I shut my studio lights off in the order the room prefers. The bench lamp first so the bottles can stop pretending to pose, then the shelf glow so the oils can dream in the dark, then the neon outside, which will outlive us all. I lock the door and press my wrist to my nose like a man who believes in toasts without witnesses. Some nights I pass lovers in doorways, all elbows and rain, and wonder what perfumes will haunt their next apartments. Some nights I carry Myra's laugh up the stairs and wait for the kettle to sing. I am not less hungry than I was. I'm more careful about what hunger claims. Desire never comes in a bottle. It hides there for a while, though, and looks back at you like a dare. My work is to make that dare smell like honesty. The rest is what two people do when they lean toward each other and refuse to humiliate the truth.